Thousands of Filipinos filled up the streets of Manila on Sunday to protest against the government of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. They've accused the government of misappropriating billions of dollars that were designed for flood relief projects. The protest organizers called for the demonstrations after President Marcos Jr. revealed back in July during his 2025 State of the Nation address that a number of flood control projects that he had previously announced as complete were riddled with anomalies. Greenpeace, which is an environmental group, later estimated that about $1 trillion Philippine pesos, that's about $17 billion US, which was supposed to help the country confront chronic and deadly flooding, had been embezzled. And to address the issue, Marcos Jr. created an independent commission to probe the flood control projects. A Senate committee is conducting its own investigation into this matter. Both the Senate President and the House Speaker have already been replaced as part of the fallout from this scandal. For years now, the ordinary public in Manila and other cities across the Philippines have been complaining about the woeful lack of infrastructure, which only gets worsened because of climate change and the exacerbation that's been caused because of severe flooding. Looking at the anger of the young protesters, President Marcos Jr. has sought to align himself with the protesters. He said that he understands the anger of the young people. He painted them as one of his own.
If I wasn't president, I might be out in the streets with them. Of course, they are enraged. Of course, they are angry. I'm angry. We should all be angry because what's happening is not right.
The demonstrations came amid a wave of discontent in parts of South and Southeast Asia in recent days. In Indonesia, thousands of protesters turned out daily for more than a week at the end of August. They called for the nation's lawmakers to reduce their lavish spending at a time of grave economic hardship. And just recently in Nepal, deadly protests earlier this month against a social media ban and economic inequality ended with the government's collapse, and much of the capital, Kathmandu, was up in flames. There were one too many similarities between what happened in Kathmandu and what played out in Manila. Organizers in Manila too called for peaceful protests, but there were some instances of violence which broke out. A group of young men hurled stones, burnt police vehicles, and clashed with police officers who were in riot gear. Some of these protesters were arrested, but the police did not confirm how many. Many of them were later let go. The demonstrations also sprung up in other Filipino cities and may prove to be one of the biggest public backlashes against President Marcos since he was elected in 2022. The main protests in Manila converged on two historic sites: the Rizal Park, where the national hero Jose Rizal was executed at the end of the 19th century, and the second major site of the protest was the EDSA Highway. That's where Filipinos had toppled the then dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr., who is the current president's father, way back in 1986. So the similarities were uncanny. The protest began before dawn on Sunday with a 10-kilometer solidarity run through the heart of Manila. Manila residents complained that their city has been infested with criminal gangs and drug cartels, and they want to now take their city back. At the early morning Sunday Mass, Father Julio Ramon Malonga read us from a statement from the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, urging more and more young people to join the protests. Some protesters used the demonstration to lampoon so-called Nepo babies. They're children of contractors and government officials who are linked to the flood control scam. Much of the anger was captured in placards that read out against the Nepo babies, mocking their lavish lifestyles. Some social media accounts, which appeared to belong to the family members of government officials, had flaunted their designer bags, private jets, and other displays of wealth, which became a lightning rod for the protesters. And that is exactly what sparked off the protests in Nepal. The hashtag Nepo babies spread around like rapid viral fire, and now the same Nepo babies had become the symbols of a corrupt system and are threatening to singe the Philippines as well. In Indonesia too, The anger of young people had brought the country down to its knees for well over a week. So the parallels of what's happening all across South and Southeast Asia is unmissable. In his 2024 State of the Nation address, President Marcos Jr. had said that the government had completed more than 5,000 flood control projects to address the worsening issue. Weeks later, monsoon rains flooded Manila, which forced the residents to wade through waist-deep water. Inspections thereafter found that many of these projects, which were meant to protect against the flooding, had not been carried out properly, or they were poorly executed. There was a lot of corruption that was later discovered in many of these projects. The timing of the Sunday protests was significant. They fell on the 53rd anniversary of Marcos Sr.'s proclamation of martial law in the Philippines, which ushered in a dictatorship which ran for many years. It ended up killing thousands of Filipinos and plundered billions of dollars before Marcos Sr. was overthrown. Now his son is the current embattled president. The last time Filipinos rallied on a large scale, similar to what we saw this weekend, was in 2013. Back then, anger was over congressional insertions widely known as pork barrel kickbacks that were funneled to lawmakers by contractors who win government projects. That spilled out onto the streets. Now, yet again, young Filipinos are railing against a corrupt system, corrupt government contractors, and their entitled kids. Something that could singe the government of Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.